South Africa, our land, the Rainbow Nation, with its history, its heroes, its diversity, and its beauty. And yet today in South Africa, there is a lot we can become despondent about. Perhaps the underlying reason behind all our challenges is our historic and continued inequality. The tragic fact is that despite the 22 years of democracy since 1994, our societal inequality has grown, and South Africa remains a divided country. In essence, there are two South Africas, the privileged one and the majority underprivileged one. Whilst the rich sector is admittedly more colourfully representative, the poor sector is less so, has grown, and is more isolated than ever before. The most evident indicator of this reality can be found within the inequalities in the education system. The World Economic Forum's Competitiveness Index for 2017 ranks the quality of South Africa's overall education system at 134 out of 138 countries. Around 80% of the 25,000 South African public schools are characterized by poor facilities, limited resources, high teacher-to-pupil ratios, and inadequate financial support. Many experts agree that the challenge is in the fabric of the structure of our society. The 4 decades that followed the Black Education Act of 1953 and the succeeding Education and Training Act of 1979 has led the majority of young South Africans to have a predominantly poorly educated generation of parents, educators, and communities. And yet, this is not for lack of effort. South Africa spends 20% of its budget on education. Government is embracing technology as part of the solution. As a result, the appetite for investment behind ICT is growing. The private sector in the country is also making strides in bringing digital education to South Africa as well. Companies are providing world-class integrated online solutions that are looking to address the various challenges in education. So why are we not winning yet? We believe the answer lies in meaningful access. Unfortunately, the large majority of the learners in South Africa remain isolated from the digital education world. In 2015, as little as 1.3% of households in Limpopo had meaningful internet access, and in most other provinces, the range was only between 6 and 9%. This means that over 90% of the 12 million learners in the country are being excluded from existing ICT initiatives. We need to mitigate 5 barriers to truly make an impact in digital education. There are almost 1.2 cell phone devices per person in South Africa. Less than 50% of those devices are smartphones, and in the poor sector of the country, that figure is around 20%. Data still remains an unaffordable luxury for the majority of South Africans. As a result of online distractions, the provision of a device and connectivity will not provide meaningful access to education. The solution per learner needs to cost the same or less than existing non-technology-based spend. Technical support, especially for teachers, needs to be provided on an ongoing basis. All of this must be done in a manner that can be rolled out today to every underprivileged learner in the country. So what if we could? Introducing the Closed Loop Learner Access Network. The Closed Loop Learner Network will open an access channel between the learner and the plethora of resources. We will create a self-funding, closed-loop network of learners nationally through the wide-scale distribution of self-contained, preloaded, and pre-networked learning devices. The device, content, and connectivity are provided free to the child. The network will provide an unprecedented real-time direct access channel to learners for the Department of Education and private sector at a national scale. Moreover, our model will leverage existing business infrastructure and capacity, requiring no additional investment from our partners, in exchange for brand association and large-scale individualized consumer access. The initial device will provide a cost reduction or cost parity per child with existing government spend on textbooks in the first year. Thereafter, new versions and content can be distributed electronically without additional logistics or costs. Is this really possible? Yes, it is, and we'll get Lesedi, a grade 12 learner in Vredefort, to show you how. After hearing about it at school, Lesedi decides she wants to be part of the CLN. She walks to the participating store closest to her home with her ID book or her student number from her school. In the store, she finds the DBE kiosk and asks the store assistant, Tebe, for help. Tebe asks her if she remembered to bring her ID or her student number from her school, and she smiles and gives it to him. Tebe checks her ID and issues her, free of charge of course, with an ITB or interactive textbook device. Opening the device, Tebe helps Lesedi answer the simple registration questions. The device then opens all the CAPS-approved textbooks Lesedi usually uses in class for all her subjects for her current grade. She now also has a large number of useful video tutorials for her subjects on her device. Lesedi notices she now has access to Wikipedia and various online Department of Education resources as well. And for the first time ever, Lesedi has also got her own email address. What's more, her teachers' and classmates' new email addresses have already been loaded as her first contacts. Tebe also shows Lesedi how to use the Learner Chat function and e-test survey buttons. Lesedi smiles and listens carefully, although given that all functionality is less than 3 button presses away, she knows she'll probably figure it out on her own anyway. Finally, Tebe explains to her that should anything go wrong with the device, all she needs to do is return it, and he will give her a new one. Lesedi asks him what happens if it gets stolen. Tebe says that as long as she has reported it to the police and received a case number, he'll gladly replace it for her. And the moment she registers again on her new device, she'll get back all her access. Lesedi is pleased with that, but asks what will happen to the stolen device. Tebe explains that the moment he registers her on a new device, the CLN system will shut the stolen one down remotely, and if it isn't in network range at the time, all the thief can do with it is study her subjects. The next day, Lesedi almost runs to class to see who else decided to join the CLN. Her bag bouncing around given that her new device has replaced half the books in her bag. In class, the teacher, Lebohang, smiles to see that there are a number of learners on the new device already. She was a little afraid of hers at first. All this new technology seemed a little threatening. But after little Tabo in the front row showed her how to use it, she realized that it was all the same content she already knew, and that her lessons wouldn't need to change in any way. Her own teacher interactive device seemed more attractive now, and she was excited to go home and try out the Wikipedia button, and even perhaps send her class an email tonight. Later that night, Lebohang thinks about the funding for the CLN. How is this all possible, she wonders. She decides to look up the CLN on Wikipedia to find out more. Reading through, she discovers that the CLN is funded through a disruptive, profitable partnership model. The cost of the textbook device is managed through the fact that, based on the partnership with the publishers, it costs less than the equivalent set of physical textbooks for the government and provides all the electronic benefits as a bonus. Also, the channel itself is kept open and profitable through the first-of-its-kind, non-invasive, yet personally relevant advertising and marketing opportunities to private industry. The channel will use the unprecedented access to this market sector, normally covered by generalized channels such as TV, radio, and SMS, to commercially sustain itself and therefore subsidize valuable learning access to learners across the country. And that's how the CLN works.